So what if the biggest barrier to a student's learning today isn't, a lack of information, but actually $1,000 glowing rectangle that we just sort of put on their desk under the guise of innovation?
Well, it is a really provocative thought. I mean, we tend to operate under this highly seductive illusion that proximity to advanced technology automatically equates to advanced cognition.
Right.
We look at a room full of glowing screens and we just assume, oh, deep transformative work must be taking place here.
Yeah, exactly, because it looks futuristic.
Right. But the cognitive reality of what is actually happening behind those screens is, well, it's often far more complex. And sometimes, honestly, it's actively detrimental to the learning process.
I totally agree. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. I'm your host, and I'm joined, as always, by our resident expert. This is where we take a stack of source material, extract the core insights, and basically help you cut through the noise.
Happy to be here.
And today, we are looking at an incredibly timely document for you. It's issue 49 of a newsletter titled Transformations. It was published in February 2026 by the Jeffco Ed Tech Department.
Yeah, an excellent piece.
It really is. And, even before you read a single word of the text, the visual branding on this document sets up the exact tension that we're going to explore today.
Oh, the design choices are so deliberate. If you look at it, you have this organic EdPech logo, right? It's a tree with these vibrant, distinct leaves, and it's rooted in a solid foundation.
Yeah, very natural looking.
Exactly. But it's sitting right next to this electric neon glowing text that says tech integration.
It's such a stark contrast. I mean, it perfectly captures the mission of today's deep dive.
Yeah.
You've got the natural sort of organic growth of a human mind paired right up against the high voltage energy of modern digital tools. And our goal today is to figure out, for you, the listener, how to bridge those two things. Like, how do we use technology intentionally so it actually opens doors to collaboration rather than just being this incredibly expensive distraction from the actual lesson?
Well, in an era characterized by relentless information overload, mastering the how of tool integration is vastly more critical than mastering the tool itself.
Does the tools change? Right.
Exactly. The specific app or device you're using today, it will inevitably be obsolete in a year or less.
Yeah, probably less.
But the underlying pedagogy, so the science of how we facilitate understanding, that is what actually determines if the technology is going to act as a bridge or just a massive barrier.
And that brings us right to a central concept that the newsletter calls beyond the shiny object. And I feel like we really need to pause here for a second because this is a cognitive trap that extends way beyond just the classroom.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you are, leading a boardroom meeting or you're designing a high school curriculum, we all kind of fall for the temptation to adopt a new platform just because it looks sleek and it promises to revolutionize our workflow.
Right, because the novelty bias is just a very powerful psychological mechanism. I mean, the human brain is evolutionarily wired to release dopamine in response to new, shiny stimuli.
Just a little chemical reward for finding something new.
Precisely. And tech companies understand this deeply. They design their interfaces to trigger that exact neurochemical loop.
So our brains light up.
Our brains light up, and we make the mistake of confusing that rush of attention for actual retention and learning.
Wow. Yeah, but attention is definitely not the same as retention.
Yeah.
So to combat that dopamine loop, the Jeffco Ed Tech Dept offers this really grounding mantra, which is pedagogy first, technology second.
I love that phrasing.
Me too. They frame it around a really brilliant reflection question. They ask you to consider, is the technology the driver or the passenger?
Which forces a really fundamental shift in perspective. The science of teaching must dictate the implementation of the hardware, never the other way around.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I want to visualize the mechanics of this. So think about it like this. If learning is a road trip, right, your learning objective, the actual synthesis of a new concept, that is your destination.
Right, where you're trying to go.
Exactly. The pedagogy is the steering wheel. The technology is just the vehicle. It's the chassis and the engine.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. But if you think about it, if the driver spends the entire trip just captivated by the digital dashboard, like tweaking the GPS voice, playing with the seat warmers, finding a radio station.
Shiny objects.
The shiny objects. The vehicle's going to veer off the road and crash, or at least get totally lost. The tool has completely consumed the working memory required to navigate the journey.
Yes, and that highlights the exact danger of thoughtless integration. The text explicitly warns against the tool distracting from the task. They point out that when the tool is used just for the sake of novelty, it obscures the learning objective entirely.
It gets in the way.
It does. However, and I think this is key, they are careful not to take an anti-technology stance here.
Right. They're not saying throw away the laptops.
Not at all. They're saying that when it's implemented with deep intention, the technology actually recedes into the background and the creativity comes to the forefront. The critical takeaway is just that a digital tool doesn't get a free pass just because it's digital.
Right.
It has to earn its place in the cognitive environment.
So if we agree that a tool has to earn its keep, I guess the immediate question for you listening right now is how do you actually measure that? Like, how do you audit your own tech stack?
Right.
Well, the newsletter provides a framework for this. It's built on 3 specific pillars that a tool has to pass before it ever even reaches a learner's hands. And if we look at them closely, they really build on each other logically.
They do. They serve as this vital sequence of filters. So the first one is perhaps the most fundamental. Does the technology add value? Like, is the digital intervention measurably superior to the analog alternative?
Yeah, and we will definitely circle back to what value really means in a minute, because that's honestly a rabbit hole all on its own.
Oh, for sure.
But the second pillar asks about accessibility. Specifically, is the tool accessible for everyone, or is there a high friction point?
And this is where we have to look at cognitive load theory.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, if a student is presented with a clunky user interface, or, if it takes 15 minutes of troubleshooting just to log into the platform, their working memory is being heavily taxed by what we call extraneous load.
Extraneous load.
Right. They are burning mental energy just trying to operate the software itself.
Wow.
Oh.
It's like putting a massive toll booth right on the highway of learning.
A toll booth, yes.
Yeah. Like if you have to pay a tax of frustration and 10 minutes of your time just to access the lesson, you've depleted the student's cognitive momentum before the actual learning even starts.
That's a perfect metaphor. And if the tool manages to pass the first 2 tests, so it adds potential value and it has low friction, then we reach the third pillar,
Right.
which evaluates the nature of the interaction itself. The question is the technology being used strictly for consumption, or does it encourage creativity and synthesis?
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second on this third pillar.
Go for it.
Because isn't consumption a non-negotiable prerequisite for learning? I mean, you have to consume information, right? You have to read these documents, watch the physics demonstration, or just listen to the lecture before you can possibly create anything meaningful with it.
That is a very fair point.
Right. We can't just demand constant output from a learner without providing robust input first.
What's fascinating here is that you're hitting on a crucial nuance. You are entirely correct that knowledge acquisition requires input.
Yeah.
But look really closely at the specific phrasing the newsletter employs. It warns against using technology for strictly consumption.
Okay. The absolute nature of the word strictly.
Yes, strictly. If we synthesize this with your toll booth metaphor from earlier, the mechanism becomes crystal clear.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a student navigating that high-friction login process, right? They pay that cognitive tax, and then the only thing they do once they're finally inside the app is passively scroll through a static PDF document.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You've introduced immense digital friction without providing any new capacity for interaction or synthesis or creation. The technology hasn't enhanced the input at all. It just made it way more aggravating to access.
That is so true. You could have just handed them a printed packet and completely bypassed the toll booth altogether.
Exactly. Bypassed it entirely.
That makes profound sense. If the glowing screen is just a more frustrating, battery-dependent version of a piece of paper, it fails the test completely.
Without question.
But let's push this even further. Because what happens when the friction isn't just, an annoying interface, but a total systemic failure?
The ultimate stress test for any modern curriculum.
Yes. The newsletter asks this amazing question. If the Wi-Fi went down right now, would learning stop?
It's a terrifying question for a lot of people.
It really is. And whoever designed this document has a brilliant, very subtle sense of humor, because embedded right in the center of the QR codes on the page is that little pixelated T-Rex dinosaur.
Oh, yes. The iconic Google Chrome offline dinosaur.
Yes. When your internet dies and you just get the little dino, it's such a perfect visual nod to the fragility of our digital infrastructure.
It really is.
It's a reminder that relying entirely on a cloud-based ecosystem just leaves you incredibly vulnerable.
It does, but it functions as a lot more than just a visual joke. I mean, it is a serious pedagogical warning. Well, the offline dinosaur is why the Jeffco EdTech Dept advocates so strongly for a blended approach.
Blended meaning online and offline.
Right. The technology should act as a bridge to physical human interaction, not an isolated island. The text essentially asks us to consider how the digital tool connects back to offline discussions and critical thinking.
I see.
So if the network drops, the cognitive work shouldn't just grind to a halt. The student should be able to seamlessly pivot, turn to their peers, and verbally debate the data they just analyzed. The text serves the human connection, not the other way around.
Okay, let's dig into that data analysis piece because we really need to define what actually constitutes a true value add. Like you mentioned earlier, we have to look at value. The newsletter poses this blunt challenge. Could this lesson be done with paper and pencil, or does the tech enhance it?
A great filter.
But let me challenge that from an educator's perspective for a second. If I take a 20-question quiz and digitize it, the cognitive load for the student taking it might be absolutely identical to the paper version, right? But the digital version auto-grades itself instantly, and it populates my spreadsheet, and it saves me like 3 hours of grading on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, isn't that efficiency a massive, undeniable value add?
You are identifying a very real benefit there, obviously. But we really have to draw a sharp line between administrative value and pedagogical value.
Okay.
Yes, auto-grading saves the instructor time, which is practically invaluable.
Yeah, teachers need their Sundays.
Absolutely. But from the perspective of the learner's neural pathways, right, typing a multiple-choice answer into a digital box instead of circling it with a pencil on paper, that does not deepen their understanding of the material at all.
I guess that's true.
In fact, it might actually introduce the temptation to quickly open a new tab and just search for the answer.
Huh. So what does this all mean then? Administrative efficiency is great for the system, but it doesn't count as a pedagogical value add for the student.
Precisely. A true pedagogical value add occurs when the technology allows the learner to do something that is fundamentally impossible without it.
Impossible.
Okay. Right. And the newsletter provides 3 really distinct examples of this mechanism in action.
Okay, I remember this. The first one they highlight is connecting the classroom to the world beyond.
Yes. Consider the mechanism here. A textbook, right? It provides a static summary of a distant place.
Yeah, just words and some pictures.
But a high-definition video conference can bring a working marine biologist who is literally on a research vessel in the Pacific Ocean directly into a middle school in Colorado.
Oh, wow.
The technology collapses geography. It allows students to ask dynamic, unscripted questions to a primary source in real time. That's a value add.
That is massive. And the second example they give is analyzing real-time data. And this feels like a huge shift in just how we understand the world.
It is. It shifts the student from a passive receiver of historical facts to an active pattern recognizer.
Right, because instead of reading a 5-year-old chart about market economics in a book, they are manipulating live data sets of global supply chain fluctuations happening that very morning.
Exactly. They are engaging in the actual work of a data scientist rather than just passively reading about what a data scientist does.
That's incredible. And the third example of a true value add is collaborating in real time. And they emphasize this isn't just like passing a piece of paper back and forth.
Right. No, this is multiple minds, potentially across completely different physical locations, simultaneously editing a digital model together, or writing a shared document, or coding a program together.
The tech literally becomes a shared cognitive workspace.
And when technology does that, when it collapses geography, provides live inputs, and creates shared workspaces, it actually expands the boundaries of human capability.
Yeah.
That is when the tool has unequivocally earned its place on the desk.
Okay, theory is fascinating, obviously. But if you are listening to this right now and nodding along, your immediate question is probably, okay, how do I actually apply this tomorrow morning?
Right, the practical application.
Because the learner persona doesn't just want theory. And thankfully, this source document is highly actionable. It transitions into this section titled, Are You Ready to Refine Your Tech Usage? And it lays out 3 very concrete steps you can take this week to audit your environment.
Which is great because philosophy without execution is really merely trivia. These steps force us to confront our own habits.
Yeah, let's go through them. Step number 1 is the self-diagnostic audit your apps.
Tough one.
It is. It challenges you to look at the last 3 applications you used with your students or maybe your team at work. Did they actually provide one of those true pedagogical value adds we just talked about? Or did they just digitize a worksheet and introduce unnecessary friction?
It requires a pretty brutal level of honesty about our own reliance on shiny objects.
It really does. And then step number 2 requires even more bravery, honestly. It's ask the students.
Yes.
The newsletter suggests taking just 5 minutes to ask the room directly, hey, which tech tool helps you learn best, and which one just confuses you?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is arguably the most vital mechanism in the entire document
Really? Why do you say that?
because it establishes a direct feedback loop. As the architect of a lesson or even a meeting, your perception of a software's friction is inherently biased.
Oh, because I already know how to use it.
Exactly. You chose the tool, you learned the interface, so you naturally assume it is intuitive.
Wow. You're completely blind to the toll booth because you essentially have the VIP pass to drive right through.
That's exactly it. Asking the end user directly addresses that accessibility pillar we talked about earlier. Furthermore, it shifts the power dynamic.
How so?
Well, it signals to the learner that their cognitive experience is the priority, not just the instructor's tech preferences. I mean, if an app is causing widespread confusion among the users, it is actively hindering the learning process. It doesn't matter how many shiny awards the software company has won.
That is so true. Which leads us to the third action step. And this is the one that really tests your nerve.
Oh, yeah.
Plan a low-tech day. Intentionally design a lesson where the screens are completely powered off to reset the balance and focus purely on face-to-face collaboration. Now, if you're an educator listening to this, you are probably anticipating the massive collective groan your room will let out when you say, laptop's closed.
Oh, they will definitely groan.
How do you manage that immediate withdrawal?
You lean into the contrast. Removing the screens cures the shiny object syndrome by just removing the objects entirely.
Well, cold turkey.
Exactly. It forces everyone in the room to rely on raw human connection, verbal debate, physical movement. Yes, there may be some initial resistance, but it serves as a really critical system reset.
Right.
It proves to the students, and honestly to the teacher as well, that the learning does not stop when the Wi-Fi drops. And often, experiencing that stark contrast makes the eventual reintroduction of technology feel much more purposeful and earned.
It's a deliberate digital detox for your curriculum. I love it.
Me too.
Now, for those of you who really want to keep pulling this thread because mastering this kind of intentional integration is basically a career-long pursuit, this newsletter provides a fantastic roadmap for where to go next.
Yes, the resources section.
In their action items section, they curate a list of resources to dive deeper into the pedagogy. They highlight 2 specific shows, the House of EdTech podcast and the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. But they also point to a very specific theoretical model, the Triple E framework developed by Lisa Kolb.
The Triple E framework is incredibly potent here.
Walk us through it.
So it stands for engage, enhance, and extend. It moves well beyond simple metrics and asks 3 rigorous questions.
Okay.
First, does the tech engage the student in the learning goals, keeping them on task? Second, does it enhance the learning by scaffolding complex concepts that would otherwise be completely out of reach?
Right, the value add.
Exactly. And crucially, the third one, does it extend the learning outside the classroom, bridging the gap between academic theory and everyday life?
That perfectly aligns with everything we've unpacked today about adding true value.
It really does.
And if you want to explore these concepts in a hands-on environment, the newsletter ensures you have the community details to do so. There is an upcoming Adobe Creativity Institute.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's happening on Saturday, February 21st, and it runs from 8:00 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. It's going to be hosted at the Jeffco Schools Ed Center.
That presents a very tangible opportunity to see these theories of integration applied to robust creative tools rather than just, tools of consumption.
Totally. And what I appreciate most is that the publishers of this document are actively inviting a two-way conversation.
Always a good sign.
If you're auditing your apps and you have a breakthrough, or if you want to contribute to future issues, they provide their direct contact information right there.
Great.
You can reach them via email at lrguyll@jeffcoschools.us, or you can connect with them on social media using the handle at jeffcoedtech.
It is always an indicator of a healthy organizational culture when the department issuing the guidelines actively solicits feedback and dialogue from the people actually implementing those guidelines on the ground.
Practice what you preach.
Right, exactly.
Well, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, unpacking the Transformations newsletter. We've explored the novelty bias of the shiny object, the cognitive toll booths of digital friction, and of course, the critical difference between administrative efficiency and true pedagogical value.
A lot to think about.
Definitely. We hope this deep dive helps you keep the pedagogy firmly in the driver's seat. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and for your dedication to intentional learning.
It has been a deeply necessary exploration. And, as we leave you to audit your own environments, consider one final thought inspired by that challenge to plan a low-tech day.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spend billions of dollars and endless hours trying to integrate the most